Alrighty, and we have my TanTan GR201 gravel frame set in a size 540, weighing in at 8.8 kilograms. That does include the out front computer mount, 2 bottle cages, a set of road pedals, power meter, the GX Ego rear derailleur, and then as well as these Continental Terra Speed gravel tires in a size 54C. 8.8 kilograms. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's video, we are taking a look at my newly built TanTan GR201 gravel bike. I'm very excited to finally have this bike built up because it did take about 2 months to get everything built up. And I really want to thank all of the various brands and companies that helped me out with parts in order to get this bike the way that you see it today. So in today's video, we're going to be going over the specs, the details on this TanTan gravel bike, and then we'll be taking it out on the road so I can give you some of my first initial thoughts on this gravel bike. Now, unfortunately, because it is still winter time and it's super cold and disgusting here in Chicago, I won't be doing any actual gravel rides as of yet, but I will be touching on what it's like to live with this bike on a day-to-day basis, taking it on some of my local roads, just to see how it handles, how it does over bumps, and then just what it feels like to be rocking the $650 gravel bike. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so as I mentioned in the introduction of this video, guys, this is my brand new TanTan GR201 frame set. The color you see here is like a gold champagne-ish color, and then the size I went with is a size 54 or a 540 as TanTan lists on their website. Now, this frame set is actually very long. It has a very long and a fairly aggressive reach. I suppose this is supposed to be intended to be a race gravel frame, so keep that in mind. So you're going to have to pay very close attention to their website by comparing the geometry chart to see if this frame is going to work for you because it is so long. And unfortunately, if you are on the shorter side of things, this frame set will probably not work for you. Now, some of the key features on this gravel frame, which is what has really been interesting to me, is the first and foremost is it comes with a UDH, a universal derailleur hanger, which is what allows me to run SRAM's latest technology of their T-type transmissions. Another key feature on here as well is it comes with internal storage in the down tube, which is really nice. So if you want to carry extra dyno plugs, an air compressor, spare tubes, anything like that, there's plenty of space in the down tube to be able to store all of those things. So only time will tell to see if whether or not this compartment door will be rattling out on the road, but we will find out once we get to the outdoors section of this build. And then another feature on here as well is it comes with the very popular T47 threaded bottom bracket, which is nice, as well as all the various mounts if you want to do fenders, extra bottle cages, a bag on the top tube, etc. So it's clear that TanTan has really thought about all the features that people really want in a modern gravel bike. And then of course it comes with a 31.6 round seat post as well. Now, moving right along, let's talk about tires and wheels. Now, first, let's talk about the wheels. So these that you see in front of you, these are from the Far East brand in China called 9VELO, and these are their flagship gravel wheels. On their website, these are what they call their GV45 2.0 gravel wheels. At the time of this recording, you can get these for about $969 USD. But let's talk about some of the specs on these wheels. So first and foremost, the rim depth on these is about 45 millimeters. The external width on these is 32.6. The internal width on these is 26 millimeters. Obviously, these are being intended for gravel. They are hooked rims. The spokes are SRAM CX-Ray, ever popular, very easy to replace these spokes. It uses the ever popular DT Swiss ratchet style internal hubs. Of course, I'm using XDR free hub. And what I really like about these wheels is number one is just how extremely true these wheels are. They're using steel bearings, but everything about the way these gravel wheels are built, these are intended to be very, very robust, exactly what you want for a set of gravel wheels. If you've done a research on any other YouTubers who have featured wheels from 9VELO, you know that they make a very, very high quality set of wheels, and I'm very excited to be using these on my gravel bike. All I do is think about you. All I Do, the song by Stevie Wonder, is one of my absolute favorite records from him, coming from the LP entitled Hotter Than July. All right, but let's go ahead and weigh out these 9VELO
2.045 gravel wheels, 722 grams, 722 grams. That's the rear wheel. And then for the front wheel, 638 grams, 638 grams, which gives us a grand total of 1,360 grams. Pretty respectable for a robust set of gravel wheels. So let's continue.
Just one other point before we continue is I am thoroughly blown away with how true these 9VELO GV gravel wheels are. I've done freewheel videos in the past where you can clearly see the mechanic stand is wobbling back and forth just because of it being unstable. But on these wheels, and I am using TPU inner tubes just for demonstration purposes, but I'm blown away with just the quality, the fit and finish, and just how well these wheels are true. Very impressive given the price point of these 9VELO wheels. And moving on to tires, so I've chosen to go with Continental's Terra Speed gravel tires. Now these are the 45C variant. However, once I mount these tires onto these 9VELO wheels, they actually only stretch out to about 42.6, basically not even 43 millimeters in width. So I'm not sure if this is a common practice from Continental to undersize their tires. Maybe they'll stretch out as time goes on, but let me know in the comments down below if this is common, if whether or not these wheels will stretch out over time. Also, let me know in the comments what your favorite set of gravel tires are for your own day-to-day riding. It's also worthy to know, which I forgot earlier, is that this TanTan gravel frame has tire clearance up to 50C tires. So keep in mind that there is plenty of space in here to run a variety of tires. Now, as far as tire pressure goes, based on my weight, I'm rocking somewhere about 35 to 37 PSI. But nonetheless, I went with these because they were relatively affordable, about $110 USD. I've heard good things about these tires on rollingresistance.com. They may not be the most durable set of gravel wheels ever. And even though I am planning on doing a lot of gravel this season, I think these will be fine given the price. Next up, let's talk about this integrated cockpit. So this cockpit is included in the price from TanTan. I believe this frame set is like $750 USD plus shipping. But as far as the details goes on this handlebars, so you have about 38 centimeters in the hoods and then about 44, maybe 46 centimeters in the drop. So basically it's an extremely flared setup, something that you want for a gravel bike. And then as far as the length of the stem, I went with a 110. So as you guys probably know, if you've been following this channel for some time, 110 millimeter length stem is very much on the short end as far as my bike fit goes. But the main reason for that is simply because of just how long the reach is of the frame itself is. So again, make sure you double check the geometry chart to make sure that this bike is going to work for you. But I think it'll be nice to have a shorter reach anyway, because it should offer a little bit of more agile handling ability, something you want, as opposed to with my road setup where I'm going with like a 140 millimeter length stem. And then as far as Bartape goes, I went with a set from Fizik. Now, usually I'm a huge fan of Super Cash, but their prices have been getting crazy. So I went to be kind of cheap with these bars. So instead of paying $45 for Super Cas, these are only like 25 bucks. And as soon as I installed these on these handlebars, I realized right away, I absolutely hate this color. I hate the way they feel, but only time will tell to see how durable they are. But I'm probably just going to swap these out for a set of black handlebar tape. Now, the saddle that I chose for this gravel build is from a brand in China called Onirii. I really hope I'm pronouncing their name correctly, but this is a 3D printed saddle, and it's a very, very nice 3D printed saddle. In some of my previous videos, I have preached so much about loving my 3D printed saddle from AliExpress, and that one was only like $70. This one retails for like $120 USD. So it is a little bit more money, but it is a far nicer and perceivably more durable of a saddle than that one. So like I said, it has carbon rails, carbon base, and then all of the pressure points are in the proper place. So you have it a little bit more firm where your sit bones are going to be, and then it's a little bit softer towards the nose of the saddle. Now, another thing I do want to point out is, as you guys can see with this TanTan gravel frame set, it does come with a 0 millimeter offset seat post, and because of my reach and my bike fit, I usually prefer at least 15 to 20 millimeters of setback. So as you guys can see on the saddle, I've had to push the rails back a little bit farther than I would like, and I would appreciate if this seat post had the 2-bolt design because that does make this a little bit more secure and it makes it less prone for the saddle to slip. But the great thing with going with a classic rounded seat post is upgrading the seat post to a better version that works for me will be pretty easy. You could probably get a replacement carbon seat post with an offset 20 millimeters for probably like $50 USD. Okay, now let's get to the main event of this gravel bike build, which is the overall group set. So as far as the levers, the crank arms, the chain rings, the brakes, the calipers, all that stuff is just standard SRAM Force Generation 1 group set. But where the fun begins is out back when it comes to the actual transmission or the derailleur itself. So as you guys can see, this is SRAM's GX Eagle. This is their entry-level mountain bike rear derailleur. And this is why I went with this frame, is because it allows me to use SRAM's latest T-type transmission. Now the cassette you see, dude, it's like a freaking dinner plate, but the cassette itself is a 10 to 52 tooth cassette. The chainring I'm using, which does have a power meter, is 44. So as you guys can see, I have plenty of climbing gears should I need it. I can't say that there's anywhere within a 3-mile drive within Chicago that I'll need something like a 44 to 52 gear ratio, but it's nice to have that. So we'll see how this actually goes in a real world application. Now, I do want to spend just a couple of minutes again on this T-type transmission out back here. So this is actually my first time building up a bike that uses this T-type transmission as well as the universal derailleur hanger standard. Now, thankfully on SRAM's website as well as their YouTube channel, setting all this up is very, very straightforward. You do have to pay careful attention though, because the installation, it's a very particular sequential set of details you have to do to get everything set up properly. You have to measure the chain itself, as far as the chain stays, all the stuff. You have to enter in the size of the cassette, the chain ring and stuff, and all that stuff needs to be done in a particular order. But it was very easy for me to do, so fear not, you should be able to do it yourself. The other thing I do want to point out is the fact that this bike build, as you see, this actually was done about a month and a half ago. However, I was just using a standard road derailleur and a road cassette, which, as you can imagine, is not optimal for a gravel build. And it was at that point that I was able to reach out and work with this online company called Cycling Limited. Now, if you are unfamiliar with who Cycling Limited are, they are a bike dealer online, and they're based in South Beach, Florida. I believe it's Boca Raton, Florida, and they offer a variety of pre-owned bikes, wheels, frames, etc. You can even trade in your old bike and they'll be able to sell that for you on their website. Now, the aspect that really stood out to me is the fact that they offer a variety of brand new components, drivetrain, etc. at very, very competitive prices. And I'm super happy that I was able to work with them to have them send me out this cassette and derailleur, because without this part, which is the most important part in my opinion of the whole entire build, I just would not have been able to do it. Some of the other aspects with Cycling Limited, which I really appreciate, is they are a family-owned business, as opposed to some huge conglomerate that's going to lowball you on your bike offer and then try to resell it for like 4 times the price. That's not their intentions. They're a family-owned business. They're very low-key, and they're really just trying to expand in a very slow, methodical approach, because they're in it for the long haul, and they're really trying to work with consumers to give them the best prices while also not trying to gouge customers on the market. All right, so now that we have everything installed, let's go ahead and do a quick run where we go through all the gears shifting. Not bad, not bad. It'll be real interesting to use this 52 tooth cog somewhere where I can find some crazy climb, but as is, it's pretty good. Now keep in mind that because this is the mountain bike derailleur versus the Explorer that's intended for road and gravel, the speed of shifting is a little bit slower, and I believe that is to accommodate being able to shift under load. No diddy. And then the final thing I want to talk about as far as Groupset is the 1x setup. So the chainring itself is a 44 tooth chainring. I probably will need to upgrade to either a 46 or 48. I just don't know if it will rub against the chainstays. And then as far as the power meter goes, that is a SRAM/Quarq spider-based power meter, which integrates perfectly with these chain rings. As far as the crank arm length themselves, this is 170, something that I've been adopting versus the 172.5. And then the actual cranks themselves, this actually is a SRAM dub wide crank set. Now, obviously you would prefer to be using a Eagle wide transmission as far as the width of the crank arms goes, but using just a standard dub wide crankset from Rode, I haven't had any problems with the chain line. It might be like 2 to 3 millimeters off, but you can basically trim that using the derailleur, the features either on the amp or on the levers. And I haven't had any problems with like chain rub or the chain not being able to go through all of the cogs on the cassette. So 170 length crank arms and then a SRAM Rode dub wide crankset. Sheesh, that was a lot to go over. So now that we've gone over the specs and details on this TanTan GR201 gravel bike, let's finally take this out on the road so I can give you some of my first initial thoughts on how this gravel bike feels out in the real world.
Mic check 1 2. Are we on? Are we on? Are we live? Is this thing on? All right, guys, so we are back outside, and as you can see, we don't even need gravel roads to completely destroy my gravel bike with all of the road film, salt, grime, the moisture, no diddy, all of that stuff here. So first and foremost, let's talk about the 4 gripes that I have with this build. Now, some of these are just personal to my bike fit, but I do think it's important that I mention them. So number 1 comes with this cockpit. Now on the hoods at 38 centimeters, perfect. I can get into my aero tuck position and be perfectly fine. However, the flares at the bottom in the drops is like 44, 46 centimeters wide. That is a little bit too extreme for my liking. Now, I've had previous gravel builds and I've been out on the road for like 6 or 7, 8 hours at a time. And a little bit of flare is perfect on the descents when you're going down like 45 miles an hour, but this is a little bit too extreme. So probably in the summertime, what I'm going to do is swap out this cockpit for something that's a little bit less extreme of a flare. The second thing has to do with this door on this internal compartment on the down tube. Now, I will say that it does rattle for sure. However, thankfully, it's not super obnoxious. It's not super annoying when you're going over bumps, but there is a little bit of rattle. So I appreciate that TanTan at least thought about this a little bit by trying to dampen the door, but you probably may need to add a little bit of extra helicopter tape just to completely mitigate the rattle from this door. But I do appreciate this feature, and I would like to see further gravel frames have this feature on it. Now, the third gripe I have, now this is just specific to my bike fit, is this bike comes standard with a 0mm offset seat post, and it's very clear, especially when I'm putting down the power, that I really do need a 20mm offset seat post, something that I'll have to purchase in the aftermarket. And as you guys can see on this 3D printed saddle, that I basically am at the maximum limits of how far back I can push back this saddle. And that's even with the fact that I've moved to shorter cranks. These are 170. Typically when I move to shorter cranks, I've had to increase the height of the saddle as well as push it back, or push it forward rather, a couple of millimeters. But even still, when I'm really trying to, get some power out, I'm at the maximum, and I'm gonna need to use a seat post that has a little bit more of a setback. And the fourth gripe is with this drivetrain. Now, nothing with the drivetrain itself. Like I said earlier, huge shout out to Cycling Limited for sending me out this T-type transmission. But what I've noticed is on the flats with this 44 tooth chainring out front, I'm always near the limits of my gearing, meaning that I am under geared for the flats on the road. So you imagine if you're doing some sort of spirited gravel ride or gravel race, this 44 tooth with the 10 tooth cog out back, you're definitely getting dropped. Let me tell you, you're definitely getting dropped. And SRAM is not exactly known for high drivetrain efficiency with that 10 tooth cog. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is also, again in the summer, is upgrade this chainring to maybe like a 46 or 48. I just don't know if I have the clearance with these chainstays because I am using just a dub wide road crank. I'll probably have to actually move to a Eagle crank just because that comes out a little bit further, and that'll allow me to use a wider or a larger chainring. And just some of the other quirks with this, and I'm getting used to this whole complete one buy system is you really have to be open when it comes to your gear selection, because you just are not going to have specific gears in order to have your proper cadence based on the power you're using. So, you know, some of these gear jumps are pretty high. And that's something I'm going to have to get used to. And just some of the other interesting things kind of with this drive chain as a whole, because this is, at the end of the day, guys, this is a mountain bike group set or derailleur versus something like a SRAM, gravel, or road explorer. There is a lot of tension in this chain, and tension is great because what that means is you're not going to have chain drops, especially paired with the specific tooth design on the chainring. But you can definitely feel that there is a little bit of drag when you're putting down the power. I haven't done any actual testing on this, but you definitely feel like there is some power loss because of how well the chain remains on here. So those are just my 4 quirks when it comes to this gravel bike. Now moving on, let's talk about some of the positive aspects of this bike build, or this gravel bike as an entire package. So number 1 is this saddle is extremely comfortable. It has a little bit of grip on it, so you're not sliding around on it. It keeps you really locked in, and this is the perfect saddle, the type of saddle you want if you are planning to do an all-day adventure or some sort of gravel ride. Good job on this saddle. The second thing I want to talk about is these gravel tires, these Terra Speed Continental tires. Yes, I do wish that in the actual measurement at the rim, I do wish that they were a little bit wider. However, they feel very comfortable over rough pavement and just on the roads in general. Very comfortable, and they definitely feel fast. And based on the rolling resistance that I've researched myself, these are definitely up there when it comes to rolling resistance, and you could definitely feel them out on the road. Some of the other awesome parts about this build is, despite the fact that this is only like a $650 frame set, other than this door rattling just a little bit, everything else, there are no creaks, there are no rattles, nothing harsh about this bike at all. Even when it came to building up this frame, everything was faced very well. I didn't have any problems at all when it came to aligning the rotors to the calipers once I installed the calipers. Just the overall fit and finish, the paint looks really good. I have no complaints when it comes to any of those things. And again, you're getting all these features in this grade of a perceivable quality for only like $650, $700 USD. I don't think I mentioned this earlier in the video, but the frame set does use a T47 bottom bracket design, and I'm using a ceramic T47 bottom bracket courtesy of Cybrei, courtesy of Joe at Pandapodium. Very smooth. It spins exceptionally well, and it should be long lasting because I've actually used the same exact bottom bracket on a previous build that I had to remove the bottom bracket for in order to use it for this build. Coincidentally, that was also from TanTan. So I have a few thousand miles on the ceramic bottom bracket from Cybrei. It's probably like $100 on Pandapodium's website. Great investment for sure. I got these super cheap and heavy Shimano MTB pedals. They work really well. Definitely keep my feet locked in, but they are definitely on the heavier side. But I also only spent like $40 on these. So if you want to get the more premium ones, probably gonna have to spend like $150. I don't know if that's really worth it, considering this overall build is probably like 8.89 kilograms. I don't think a little bit of extra weight is really gonna matter, but just keep that in mind. Now, before I get to my thoughts on the actual riding dynamics of this TanTan gravel bike, I do want to just say that overall, I'm very impressed and I'm very happy with how this build went together. For the most part, I am very satisfied with the choice of components I use. I think that this large Eagle cassette out back, I do think that this is the right choice. And, you know, using this very affordable T-type transmission, I just got to figure out how I can put on a larger chainring so that when I'm on the roads, on the flats, that I'm not basically in my smallest cog in the front as far as trying to get that power down. But the overall fit and finish, just the way this bike looks, it's very clear as to why this frame set has been very popular for TanTan, considering the price point. You get custom colors. Like I said before, just keep in mind that if you are on the shorter side, this frame set may not work for you. But all in all, just the way this bike came together, I'm very impressed, and I'm excited to continue riding this gravel bike through the spring and summer months.
Out on the road, the frame feels very robust when putting down the power or when you're out of the saddle. There's no flex from the bottom bracket area, and the ride feels feels firm rather than lazy. And the steering so far has been very predictable. Now, with this being a gravel bike, it's difficult to go into a very nuanced riding experience compared to a road bike because, for one, the geometry of a gravel bike versus a road bike is very different, with this gravel bike intended to withstand the harsh gravel roads, and it's doing this by added comfort as well as added control. But the overall riding experience so far is exactly what I expected from this TanTan GR201 frame set. It's very controlled, it's a blast to ride out over rough pavement, and there's comfort for all-day riding experience. Now, moving back to that Eagle GX transmission. Now, despite the fact that the gearing is under geared, just to give you some context, I'm basically in my 10th out of 12th cog on my cassette when I'm at cruising speeds on the flats on basic roads. So that means that between 20 to 22 miles an hour at, say, about 200 to 215 watts at a cadence of like 80 RPM, I'm only 2 more cogs left on my cassette before I'm spinning out. But despite the fact that I am under geared, the shifting is very crisp and it's very, very precise, even under load. So the experience so far with that Eagle transmission has been very, very good. Again, I just have to figure out what to do with that front one by Chainring because the 44 tooth is just way undersized. And then finally, moving on to the wheels, these 9VELO GV2.045 wheels, they are paired perfectly with this gravel bike. They feel very, very robust. A lot of attention to detail has gone into these wheels, and I've mentioned that before as well. Things like 9VELO has greased the end caps. They've also greased the star ratchets within those hubs. Just the choice of components like those SRAM CX rays, the internal width, everything about these gravel wheels make a lot of sense with this gravel frame. And 9VELO is able to do all of this at a very competitive price point. So I'm happy to have these wheels paired with this gravel frame. It just makes perfect sense in my opinion. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys. Huge shout out once again to TanTan for sending me out this gravel frame set. Shout out to 9VELO for the gravel wheels. Thank you to Onirii, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, for this 3D printed saddle. And a tremendous thank you to Cycling Limited down in South Beach, Florida for sending me up this SRAM GX Eagle transmission derailleur, as well as the matching cassette. As you guys have probably figured out by now, constantly bringing you guys new bike builds throughout the year is really expensive, and especially things like wheels and group sets, those things are always usually pretty pricey for me. In fact, every year when I go to do my taxes and I'm speaking out to my accountant, he basically tells me that I'm in a red every single year because these bike builds, they really are not profitable. This whole entire YouTube channel, it basically just subsidizes my love for cycling, but it's not actually that profitable at all. So it's really important for me, and I'm very thankful to be able to work with various brands in order to constantly bring you guys new bike builds throughout the year. Questions, comments, and concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'm gonna check you guys on the next one. And then stay tuned later in the spring as I will be doing a longer term review on this TanTan GR201 frame set. Thanks for watching. Peace.